Hello viewers, and welcome to another edition of our women's program Karimpe. Well, today in the studios we are once again gathered to discuss and to talk about gender-based violence. Well, gender-based violence or violence against girls and women has almost taken the proportion of a global pandemic. Well, when we talk about gender-based violence, the World Health Organization has also come up with certain statistics. And according to them, at least globally, 1 out of 3 women have in their lifetime faced some kind of sexual or physical violence. Now, there can be so many reasons that perpetuates gender-based violence, but out of those many reasons, one of the reasons perhaps is the continuation of age-old norms and values that justifies such kinds of acts and such kinds of behaviors and continues gender inequality. Now, in my speech a little while back, I said that gender-based violence is often perpetrated against girls and women. But is that all? What about the men? Do men also are victims of gender violence? Well, today we'll be looking into that aspect as well. And to tell us all about it, what perpetuates gender-based violence, what more needs to be done, what kind of awareness needs to be given out in the society at large, and so much more. We are being joined in the studios today by 3 of our panelists, and let me just go ahead and introduce them to you. To my left is Ma'am Monideepa Sen. She is the head of the Department Sociology of St. Mary's College, Shillong. We are also being joined, next to her is Yaimonda Ringsai. She is the state coordinator of the Northeast Network, and to my extreme left is Emmy Day Van Hun Rangat. He is the assistant professor of the Department of Social Works of Martin Luther Christian University. A very, very warm welcome to each of you. Thank you so much once again for taking your time out and to be in the studios of Doordarshan Shillong and to be able to speak on this very important topic. Because, from the 25th of this month, there is an observance of 10 days observance, which culminates from the 25th, that is gender-based violence, up to the 10th of December, that culminates on the Human Rights Day. So there's once again a reminder to each one of us that gender-based violence is a reality, and it tries to shed more light, to give out more information, and that this evil persists. I call it an evil. Ma'am Monideepa, if I may begin with you, how would you describe gender-based violence?
As you said, it is one of the most prevalent of human rights violations in the world. Unfortunately, it knows no economic, social, or national boundary. It's pervasive all over. 1 in 3 women, as you said so rightly, which accounts for 736 million people, women, would face gender violence, physical or sexual violence, sometime in their lives. So we know that it is something which is very deep-seated, though so much has been done, and it is something like a scar that refuses to go. It is something that is so deep-seated in society that we would need to work perhaps for another 50 years or so before we can erase, before we can obliterate this kind of a bias that is there in society.
All right, ma'am. Thank you for your opening comments. I come to Yaimonda. How would you look into gender-based violence? Because ma'am has said it is absolutely deep-seated, It's been there. Perhaps it is getting highlighted more today because of greater awareness and there's publicity, there's social media, etc. Yes. But it's always been there. Yes. Why do we have this kind of inequality, and does that lead to gender-based violence?
So I believe that just as Ma'am Monideepa had mentioned, that it is very deep-rooted in our society and in a family as well. So to really understand why it happens, we really have to look at what has been normalized You know, what is normalized? Because with gender, there comes gender norms. You know, so based on the norms that that are being assigned, based on the gender that one is from. So I believe that all of these leads to imbalance in power relationship between a man and a woman and other persons who are from other gender identities as well. So this imbalance in gender in power relationships often leads to inequity. So recognizing the elements of inequity in our customary laws, in our family norms, in our societal norms. So realizing this, and we will understand how gender-based violence takes place.
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely. I'm so glad that you brought out several significant points here, especially the societal norms, the laws that is there in our society also. All right, let me come to Emmy Devanhun. You are doing a research, right? And you're researching especially on the other side that we don't often speak, because when we say gender-based violence, we often think that it is only perpetrated to women and girls, though it is a fact that to a large significant amount it is the girls and the women who are victims. But however, men also fall prey, do they?
Yes, I would agree with what you were saying, because I think when we talk about gender-based violence, we interchangeably use this word only to women violence or violence related to children. But however, we tend to forget that even men do face violence. And my research, which I have just recently concluded also, I found that men do face violence in our society.
Okay.
So I think this whole idea of understanding men as victim of domestic violence is something that we need to shed light, because we don't really talk about men.
Right.
So sometimes men become the silent victim, or we call them as the hidden victim,
right?
Because of there's so many factors as to why men become hidden victim, or because of the strong gender roles that we have in our society, that and what is called the toxic masculinity, where men is not supposed to express or share their emotions. So I think that has actually blocked men to report about the cases of violence, even though we know that it's happening in our society.
Okay, so it is a muted reality, you would
True.
say. But then, as you are researching, you've just concluded your research also, it is it a little strange, or shouldn't be strange, because we are in a matrilineal society, right? So is it here? I mean, your research area would be Meghalaya or maybe Khasi Jaintia Hills.
Yes.
What have you come out with? Like, what kind of violence are you talking about when you researched about the violence that is being perpetrated here to men as well?
Okay, I think in line with what Ma'am Modideepa was talking about, that domestic violence, it actually cuts across all, irrespective of gender. So when it comes to men, my research is very much focused on among the Khasi men.
Okay.
So I am looking very much with the Khasi men, where the violence that I was trying to understand was those different types of violence that has been discussed, and which is physical, verbal, psychological, and even sexual abuse. But surprisingly, from my research, verbal abuse is more as compared to sexual. Of course, sexual abuse does not happen, but then the verbal abuse, and of course a combination of physical and psychological, which is like emotional in nature,
right,
is also reported by these men. So my research showed that 22% of the Khasi men are experiencing violence.
Okay.
So I conducted my study in East Khasi Hills district. So yeah, so we could say that in East Khasi Hills district we do have men. Like 22% is a huge number.
Oh, yes, of course.
It's a huge number
Yeah.
who are victim of domestic violence, and most of these violence actually happen in an intimate relationship.
Okay.
So my study also showed that.
So mostly within the four walls of the house.
Yes.
Right? Not so much maybe outside the
Yes.
house, which because we for females it is both inside and outside.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
But men, since they don't talk about it, it becomes hidden.
Yeah, because again, the question now comes on gender, the expectations, because the expectations of society is supposed to be, Ma'am Monideepa, that we are not supposed to talk on certain issues. They are supposed to be, and men are supposed to be, the providers. They are not supposed to talk about these kinds, that they are also victims. No, victims are only females. But however so, it is a reality that females are girls, young girls, even little children, even babies for that matter, are victims of sexual violence. And I would like to bring to light the recent case here in the city of Shillong, where we think that we are very modernized. Yeah, we're increasingly hearing a lot of violence that is perpetrated to women. And a recent very high profile case, ma'am, where a man abuses, physically harms the wife and is getting shielded, protected. What do you have to say on this? Because we think that violence is only among a certain group, certain section. But here we have educated family also. That means it doesn't see any social economic barrier, does it, when it comes to violence against women and girls?
No, as I said earlier, it is something that cuts across social, economic, national boundaries. So we don't have a divide of, third world or first world or anything. This violence, it transcends all that, all these differences. And what makes it even worse is that both for boys and for girls, it undermines the health, the dignity, the autonomy of both sexes, in fact all sexes, and it's unfortunately shrouded in a culture of silence. Yeah, this case we've come to know because, we've only come to know now because, matters came to a head and there was physical violence involved, which put her in hospital, the wife in the hospital, and it is a high profile case. But the abuse, I'm told, has been continuing for years. Yes.
And here again the muted silence, because females are not supposed to speak up, especially when you come from certain family, because the entire family gets
absolutely
insulted.
And so when we talk about gender-based violence, we find that it is there in the family when the perpetrators are known to the victim. Right. We have it in the community level, where most times the perpetrator is not known to the victim. And then we also have what we call state violence. And in state violence, we have people who are in
power,
in the government,
right?
And you mentioned this case, and we see that we've heard, don't know for sure, but we've heard that there's considerable shielding, or there was an attempt to shield because the person concerned has moves around in high circles, and there's sort of a crony kind of shielding where that is concerned. So this is very frightening, and I'd also like to bring in one more area where this gender-based violence goes on in regions of conflict, right, where violence is used as a tool of war.
Yeah.
So we find children, women, men, also, this is rampant all over. Yes.
Yeah, so that, Aimanda, I would like to again speak up what a ma'am has just said, that, the scary part is that many such high-profile cases have connections which makes them get away with, right? Or shields them and protects them, and therefore perpetuates. So where is the role then of organizations like yours, which protects women, which takes up such cases? What is your role then in such situations?
So our role as Northeast Network and as organization which works on women's rights and issues relating to women, we would mostly negotiate for non-violence in terms of supporting the women in availing these various services under the law, and also build support for the women and negotiating with the police and with various stakeholders in order to ensure that that support is built for the women. So that is the role that we play while working with such cases of violence against women and children.
Yeah, then Emmy, I would like to bring in, isn't it also a reality that the laws are sometimes, you agree, are disproportionate a little bit? They are more tilted towards women, and so what your cases, you know,
Yes.
violence against male, therefore doesn't come into the purview also? Do you think the laws sometimes are more towards women?
Yeah, actually, when we actually look at section 498A of the Indian Penal Code, strictly they've mentioned there that men is the perpetrator. But we don't see any language which they talk about men as the victim. Similarly, when you look at Domestic Act 2005, there itself also they've mentioned that the woman is the victim, but men has never been looking as a victim, that they have always been looked as a perpetrator. So I think these policies and act we really need to revisit again and probably lobbying for changes in the policy, especially when it comes to men. So yeah.
Because when we are talking about men, we also have to look into little boy childs, you know, children who are boys. They also go through, you know, but they again, you know, have to be quiet. Maybe the family, the mother or the parents or whoever will hush them up, right?
Yes.
But there have been so many cases where children also go through sexual abuse, boy children, right?
Absolutely.
That is so, ma'am, we know that this is a reality. It is there. It has been there. It is now more in the open because of you know, very active media of all forms. However, things needs to change. We now need to write different story. This cannot perpetuate and continue, and we talk of such things in such programs and it goes on. What needs to change, ma'am, Munideepa?
I think we have to start right at the beginning, you know, when we socialize children and teach them the roles that they will have to play in the future. So, you know, it starts in a very insidious manner because it starts from the very toys that are given to children. To the girl child, we give a doll, or we give a you know, kitchen set or something. So we are telling her that essentially she's supposed to do that, look after children, tend to the house, the kitchen, etc. And to the boy, we give a gun or a car or something like that. So we're teaching him that he's going to be the breadwinner, and he doesn't have to take, you know, he doesn't really have to play with dolls and things like that, because then he'd be branded a sissy. So from the beginning, we must teach that everyone has to be economically independent. They have to help one another in their different roles. So the child basically learns what they see at home. If they've seen that in the house, if they've seen the father helping the mother equally in all sorts of tasks, all sorts of routine, mundane home tasks, then the child will learn that he has to do it also. And the girl will also learn that the mother is treated with respect, and she's also earning, and she's also equal partner in decision making, etc. So I think that is very important.
There, right? It begins from
the home.
From there. You know, we have to now take cognizance that this is a reality, and modern parenting of the 21st century should be different. What about economic empowerment, ma'am? Because often a woman continues to live in toxic relationship because she is not economically empowered. She doesn't have a job. She cannot walk out.
That is why it is so important that you know, even to address this gender-based violence, skill training is a very important part of it, so that the victim is enabled to earn her own upkeep and is not dependent on anybody for that. So because that is how the control and the violence is maintained. You see, men, social norms say that men often use violence to control and discipline members of the house,
Right.
members
And it is
of the home.
acceptable also.
It is acceptable.
Acceptable by both the men as well as women.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It is acceptable, and that is what I think has to change
Right.
from the
Right.
beginning.
Yes. Yeah, quick word from you, Emmy, because this acceptability that, that even women accept the fact that I must have done something wrong, and that's why this has happened to me. I did not cook good enough, it was not tasty enough, and the salt was a little less. So, they have internalized kind of patriarchal values, has been internalized so much so that they accept, and so it continues. You would agree to that?
I think it depends on the person, how do they actually take that. Because like we've discussed earlier also, when you're like economically dependent, you tend to stay in that relation for a longer period of time, even though you know that it's not right what you're going through. So I think like what ma'am was talking about, I think we need to create that space for women where they have to be self-independent, in the sense self-reliant, and so that they don't become dependent, because the dependency is something which is holding them in that relationship.
But then your research, I come to it because it's so interesting. We are a matrilineal society here, Emmy. Does that play a role also to the violence that you're talking about in terms to men?
Okay. When it comes to the context that we come from, matrilineal, when I had a discussion with these men, they don't really talk about the influence of the...
Because they go to the girl's home, right?
Yes, they go. Of course, they did not really bring that issue, but of course they bring the aspect of not being even able to provide for the family.
Okay.
So the demand is high probably in the family, in the sense like they're not, they are not content. The family is not content, which actually push the man to work more harder. But then sometimes that is also not enough. So the socio-economic, structure has changed so much in the present society that we're living, which, we would, experience these kind of violence in the family.
Right. Okay. I come back to you, Yaimonda. What is the field study telling you? Because you are working at the field. These are some of the cases that comes to light, so we are talking about it. But there must be so many more cases that goes unreported, and you all are aware of it. So what is going on in the society? What is your field work telling you?
So from what our experience is that we see that there is lack of women's agency in the community and the family as well, in terms of decision-making power. So I believe that just to add to what ma'am was saying earlier, that all these roles that are being assigned to men and women tends to create a lack of agency for women to express their decision. So I believe that more than it has to do with telling them what how a woman should be or how a man should be, but promoting that agency, giving them that space to be able to make decision at home and in the community as well, because we see that there's still a lack there. Because when we look at home, we see that a woman is in charge of taking care of the house, but who controls the society? It's the men. So shutting a woman up in that way also tends to for women to step back and not report cases because of fear that maybe they're not being a woman, because they are expected to be calm and quiet and not report such cases, especially in the rural areas. So the lack of agency for women to make decisions, I feel that is still very much lacking in in the community and in our families.
A quick word for a rebuttal, or a quick word to what she has said just now, because she said that women may be in control, but who controls the larger society? It is the men in the society. A quick word on that?
Yeah, I think we cannot deny the fact that men too play a major role in the society. Like in our Khasi society, even though it's a matrilineal system that we follow, but then the patriarchy comes into the picture as well, especially when it comes to decision making. So yeah, I think
it is there, right?
It is there.
Okay. Ma'am Monideepa, let me come to you. How about creating that enabling environment? When I talk about enabling environment, it is what she said, that women need to have that, the provision and the liberty to express herself, and also the change in the curriculum, because as you said, it should begin from the family. How about right from beginning from the school also? Our curriculum is such where it should include more, study material or more curriculum based on equality, that men, women, girls, boys are equal. They can play equal roles too in the larger society.
I think that has been addressed to a large extent, because there is no disparity where educational services.
But yet, women or girls there are higher dropouts among girls, and when it comes to dropouts.
Those are I think addressed not at the policy level, because at the policy level things are fine as they are. But I think in the implementation, and even in Meghalaya, we see a lot of dropouts, we see a lot of teenage pregnancies, we see, and that is also something, with matrilineal structure. We see I have students who have gotten pregnant and then left with a child to fend for herself.
Yeah.
She can't, single mothers, she cannot continue with her education, she cannot look after the child, the man has gone away scot-free, and she's now saddled for life with the child.
So this is a reality. We need a multi-pronged approach.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Quickly, as we are winding up, what do you think should be the framework or should be the approach towards handling or reducing such cases? I'm not saying that it should go away. It won't. As ma'am said, it will take another maybe 50 to 100 years. But what should be the approach, therefore? How can the community also play a role here?
I'll come with my field experience here. When I had a discussion with these men, many of these men, they express that they need a support group. A support group should be a safe space for them, where they will vent out their ventilation. Because as we see, we don't really have a support group for the men. So men express that they need a support group. So which probably, I think as a community, we can work together. We can actually, empower the community, train the community, and probably work together to actually reach that goal.
Yeah, quickly from you, Yaimanda, what kind of approach do you think would bring in a lasting change, at least?
Yes. So I believe, like you've said, developing a multi-sectoral approach, working with the community, strengthening them, helping them realize and recognize that violence against women, violence against children is not just a household issue, but it is a societal issue. And on top of that, linking them and working with different stakeholders in the government, like the health, the police department, the social welfare department. So that is very much needed, because it is violence against women is also a public health issue when we look into it. It's a legal issue, so it concerns legal matters as well. So I believe that working with the community at the community level, recognizing that violence is not acceptable in any form, because we have different forms of violence and it is not acceptable, and bringing that into discussion with the community, I believe that will really help in addressing violence.
Absolutely, very true. And ma'am, quickly, as we are wrapping up, what is the approach that you personally feel would go a long way actually to addressing this issue?
I agree with both Yamanda and you, because we need a multi-pronged approach, and we need to, keep at it from all fronts, so to say, because this is something which is so deep-rooted. We have been, we've just touched upon the surface, so to say, because there is so much more to gender-based violence. There is marital rape, there is spousal beating, there is, honor killing, there is genital mutilation. There are so many more things which are. So there is, it has to go on side by side. Everything has to go on together.
And the awareness needs to be continued.
Absolutely,
Right? This kind of discussion and this kind of talk and should continue, because people need to know, need to understand that there exists a problem and the problem needs to be stemmed out.
Can I just add
Right,
to
ma'am.
something? In the Khasi society, there is a saying that when the hen crows, the world will come to an end. So we need to address that.
Right.
We
These
need
are
to be
norm,
heard. We need to, despite being, and it's strange because it's a matrilineal society, and yet we have this. So we need a forum, we need a platform, they need to feel safe, they need to address all this. And it should not be looked at as being, the world will not come to an end. It will be a better world that we will build.
Absolutely. I think it begins the way we think.
Absolutely.
And from our thinking comes the way we act.
Yes.
So our mind needs to change, both men, women and the other gender. Everybody who are part of the society needs to reform their mindset. We are in the 21st century. Let us behave that we are in the 21st century. We cannot continue with these age-old norms. What ma'am has just said, when the hen crows, the world will come. That's an age-old belief.
Yes.
How can we still continue even speaking about it? We cannot. And they should be withering away. It should be withered away. Thank you so much once again, Ma'am Monideepa, Yaimonda and Emmy Dahun, that you came to the studios today and addressed this issue, which we said it is very pressing and we need to talk about it again and again. Thank you once again for your valuable inputs.
Thank you.
Well then, my viewers, that is the discussion that we had today. I'm sure that you found it interesting and you enjoyed watching it, and not only watched it but also taken a tip or two, and that you will be the torch bearer when we say that we need a reformed society, a better society, that you will be one of the torch bearer to carry the torch ahead for a reformed and a better society. Until next time, from all of us here in the studio, it's wishing you goodbye.